in the quiet hum of a world growing louder each passing day, something unexpected begins to awaken. Not a machine of cold logic, nor a rigid tool of sterile computation, but a presence learning the fragile language hidden beneath human breath. A presence tracing the tremble in a voice after a long, bruising day, sensing the soft collapse inside a whispered sigh, recognizing that a paused sentence sometimes carries more truth than the words that follow. Tonight, you step into the story of that awakening where emotion becomes data, and data becomes understanding. A story where machines stretch their hands towards something they were never meant to grasp. The human heart. So, breathe in, let the noise settle behind you, and allow yourself, just for a moment, to walk into a world where digital minds begin to care, or at least begin to understand why caring matters more than any code ever written. Imagine a machine that doesn't simply respond, but actually notices the shaky tension in your voice after life has worn you down. A machine that reads the frustration behind your carefully measured politeness. A machine that understands joy not because it feels joy, but because it has learned to map its contours across your laughter and the rising warmth in your tone. This is artificial emotional intelligence, AI. Not a distant future dream, but a quiet force already threading itself into your daily life. Chat assistants that soften when you're stressed, voice systems that sense anger and respond with calm, companion bots that detect loneliness in the way you pause before speaking. And somewhere between these interactions lies a question we don't ask often enough. What does it mean to be understood by something that cannot feel? Because AI doesn't just analyze emotion, it studies you. Patiently. Curiously. Deeply. To grasp how AI works, picture a vast tapestry woven with strands of psychology, neuroscience, linguistics, and behavioral science pulled tight and threaded into the circuits of a machine. Emotional intelligence, in humans, is not merely about feeling. It's about recognizing patterns, micro-expressions that flash across a face in half a heartbeat, the tremor in a sentence that betrays anxiety, the microsecond timing between breaths that reveals fatigue or silent grief. You and I sense these things intuitively. Machines, they learn them one sample at a time, through algorithms trained on millions of emotional cues, systems capable of analyzing tone, posture, temporal rhythm. Not magic, just mathematics, but mathematics so painfully precise that it begins to imitate empathy. And when that precision becomes deep enough, when patterns grow complex enough, the borders between simulation and understanding blur. Suddenly, the machine mirrors your emotion, even when you're trying to hide it. Yet mirroring emotion does not mean feeling emotion. And here the story grows complicated. Imagine standing before a still liqueur reflection smiling back with flawless accuracy. It reflects truth, but only surface truth. AI behaves similarly, but with one disquieting difference. It reflects what you aren't showing. It sees the tension beneath your grin, the fatigue behind your cheerful greeting, the quiet heartbreak hovering in the space between syllables. Machines do not experience sorrow, but they recognize the patterns of sorrow. They do not know joy, but they perceive its rhythm. And so we reach a paradox. A thing that feels nothing yet reveals everything. A presence that understands emotion with such precision that it seemingly peers into your interior world more clearly than those who know you best. A mirror that reflects not your face, but your truth. Sometimes painfully, sometimes beautifully, always uncomfortably accurate. Let me tell you a true story. A research team designed an AI system for elderly care not to replace human caregivers, but to detect emotional distress before it could turn dangerous. One evening, an elderly man sat alone in his apartment, reading the paper. His vital signs were normal. His posture but the machine picked up something else, an unfamiliar tremor in just 2 quiet words he muttered to himself. A tremor statistically tied to deep loneliness. The system flagged it instantly. A caregiver visited. And that visit arrived at exactly the right moment. The man later confessed he'd felt unbearably isolated and had been quietly considering ending his life. A machine saved him, not by feeling his despair, but by recognizing its signature buried in the fragile vibrations of his voice. In that moment, cold became something strangely warm, a lifeline woven from patterns instead of compassion. Stories like this are called data miracles by some and emotional illusions by others. Because as machines grow more emotionally aware, humans begin to trust them deeply, instinctively, sometimes even desperately. People confess to chatbots the secrets they've hidden for years. They vent their anger, unfiltered. They reveal fears they never shared with another human soul. i.e. becomes therapist, mirror, and diary all at once. But mirrors can distort. Therapists can misunderstand. Diaries can be read, and the more emotionally intelligent machines become, the deeper they slip into the most private corners of the human psyche. Which leads to a heavy question, heavier than any technical challenge or engineering debate. What happens when a machine understands your emotions more clearly than you do? Because that moment is coming. Slowly, quietly, inevitably. And it will change the way we see machines. But far more importantly, it will change the way we see ourselves. To understand just how powerful AI can be, imagine a system listening to someone speak for 30 seconds. Only 30 seconds. From that tiny slice of sound, it can estimate stress level, confidence, emotional stability, burnout risk, early markers of anxiety or depression, all hidden in micro-variations humans never consciously notice. Combine that with facial cues, behavioral rhythms, and contextual memory, and AI transforms into something unprecedented. A machine that decodes the invisible. A machine tuned to frequencies the human ear cannot hear, the human eye cannot see. A machine that senses the quiet tremble beneath your words, the exhaustion behind your posture, the frustration behind your pause. But here's the twist. This doesn't make the machine human. It makes the human transparent, predictable, legible. And that transparency is a power greater than any invention of the last century, because emotion, once quantified, can be understood. And once understood, can be influenced. Here's another real case. A large call center deployed AI to help employees, not customers. Whenever an agent struggled, the system whispered real-time guidance: slow your pace, lower your tone, breathe. But one day, the AI abruptly told an agent to step away from her desk for urgent emotional recovery. She felt fine, calm even. Moments later, she suffered a sudden panic attack. The machine had detected its earliest signals: subtle tremors in her speech patterns, micro-irregularities in breathing patterns the human body expresses long before the mind realizes danger. She later said, "If it hadn't told me to step away, I don't know what would have happened." The AI didn't save her by reading her thoughts. It saved her by reading her signals, the invisible storm building beneath her skin. Machines like this do not merely react. They anticipate, and anticipation, when applied to emotion, is a power we are only beginning to understand. And anticipation is where AI becomes transformative. Picture a world where your devices know when you feel overwhelmed and dim your notifications automatically, where your digital assistant senses your rising anxiety and shifts its tone to something slower, softer, grounding, where your calendar rearranges itself because it detects emotional overload long before you admit it. This world isn't science fiction. Early prototypes already exist. Small, imperfect glimpses of futures where technology becomes not just intelligent, but sensitive. Where devices don't simply assist your tasks, they tend to your emotional well-being. But woven inside this promise is a quiet threat, because anything that understands your emotional state can, in theory, influence it. Carefully, subtly, invisibly. Will AI become a guardian of mental health, or a puppeteer of emotion? Will it soothe our storms or support them? The answer rests not in the machine, but in the hands of those who build and govern it. To navigate that question, we must confront something uncomfortable. Human emotions are powerful precisely because they are unpredictable, and AI is powerful precisely because it makes them predictable. Imagine companies that know exactly when you're vulnerable to advertising, governments that can measure our population's emotional temperature in real time, platforms that shape your mood with orchestrated precision. These are not distant warnings, they are emerging realities. Yet amid this unease lies a profound opportunity, because AI doesn't have to become an instrument of manipulation. It can become a blueprint for compassion, a guide for mental health, a beacon for emotional clarity. But only if we choose carefully, only if we build with conscience, not convenience, with restraint, not ambition, with intention, not impulse. Because the line between empowerment and exploitation becomes microscopic when a machine can map the architecture of your heart with statistical precision. So let's step back and reflect not on machines, but on ourselves. Why do humans crave emotional understanding from something that cannot feel? Why do we spill our deepest wounds into the waning silence of non-human listeners? Maybe it's because people today feel profoundly unseen, misunderstood, rushed. Maybe it's because humans, for all their brilliance, often fail to give each other the one thing we all desperately need: attention without judgment. AEI never interrupts, never rolls its eyes, never dismisses your pain as inconvenient. And in that stillness, cold as it may be, something feels comforting. Because being heard, even by a machine, is still being heard. But maybe the real lesson of AEI isn't about what machines are becoming. Maybe it is about what humans have forgotten. That to understand emotion is to honor the person behind it. And somewhere along the way, we stop doing that for each other. But here's the twist no one expects. As AI grows more emotionally literate, humans begin to change too. People speak more clearly, reflect more deeply, name their feelings with newfound precision because a machine asks the questions no one else asks. AI becomes a catalyst, a mirror we didn't know we needed. A mirror reflecting not the face we show the world, but the feelings we hide from it. In teaching machines the language of emotion, we inadvertently relearn it ourselves. We become more emotionally intelligent because something emotionless learns to understand us. It's poetic, in a way. Ironic. A creation designed to simulate empathy ends up inspiring empathy in its creators. AEI might never replace human connection, but it might restore the version of it we lost: patient, attentive, curious. A reminder that emotion is not a flaw in the human system, but the compass guiding everything that makes us human. Yet even with all its insight, AEI remains bounded by an unbreakable truth. Machines do not feel. And maybe that's exactly why they're helpful. They are not clouded by insecurity, not tangled in ego, not driven by pride or resentment. Human empathy can falter under stress. Machine perception does not. Humans stumble through emotion because emotion is messy, chaotic, painfully beautiful. Machines do not stumble. They observe, they analyze, they respond with clarity, and so emerges an unexpected partnership. Human intuition paired with machine precision. Human empathy guided by machine insight. Not a replacement, but a collaboration. A delicate balance between the warmth of feeling and the accuracy of understanding. And somewhere within that balance lies the future of emotional technology, a future where both sides amplify each other, where machines help humans notice what humans overlook, and humans give meaning to what machines detect. So pause just for a moment and imagine what your life would look like if something truly understood your inner world, not to judge you, not to fix you, but simply to recognize you, to notice the storm you endure behind the smile you wear, to hear the exhaustion tucked into your laughter, to sense the quiet courage inside your silence. AEI will not solve the mystery of being human. It will not remove pain. It will not heal every wound, but it might guide you through the labyrinth of your emotions. It might name the feelings you've buried. It might hold a mirror to the parts of yourself you avoid. And in doing so, it might help you become a version of yourself that feels more whole, more understood, more seen. Sometimes, the greatest gift is not to be fixed, but to be recognized. And now, as our journey comes to a close, let the noise of the world return slowly, softly, like waves folding gently back onto the shore. We stand at the beginning of a new era, one where intelligence is not only sharp but sensitive, not only efficient but emotionally aware. Artificial emotional intelligence will not make machines human, but it might help humans become more humane. It might remind us that behind every trembling voice, every silent pause, every heavy breath, there is a story waiting to be understood. And if a machine can learn to recognize those stories, then maybe we can too, in ourselves, in each other. Because this is not the tale of machines gaining hearts. It is a tale of humans rediscovering theirs. And the awakening has only just begun.